Thanks, Mfundo. Let's take a look at our all-share index that's currently high at 0.7%. It's reached 97,951. A quick look at our currencies. The rand is currently trading at 17 rand 72 cents to the dollar. It's sitting at 24 rands 12 cents to the pound, and it is at 20 rands 80 cents to the euro. And a quick look at the commodities. Gold currently trading at 3,352, while platinum is sitting at $1,367 per ounce, and the price of Brent crude oil has retreated. Today it's now sitting at $69.89 a barrel. Remember that yesterday it had breached the $70 mark. But for more on the markets for today, our market commentator is Mohammed Wekley. Thank you so much for joining us, Mohammed. As always, we already enjoy your input. A short while ago, manufacturing output was released by Stats SA. It looks like it has bounced up, beating the forecast and expectations of many of yourselves and other analysts. Could this be a turnaround for the manufacturing sector?
Hey, Tib, always a pleasure to be on. Thank you very much for your kind words. But yes, look, in terms of those manufacturing numbers, I've got to say they did come in a little bit better than I was expecting. But in terms of a turnaround, I've got to say that it's too soon to say. As recently as last month, we were seeing the data point towards a slump just in relation to, load shedding being introduced again. And obviously things have quietened down on that front as well. But yeah, the number came in on a year-on-year basis about 0.5% greater than it was the previous year. So that is with reference to May's number in 2024. And then with reference to how it did month to month, I think that was a 2.5% increase. So a lot better than expected, but if I dive a little bit further into the numbers, we're seeing sort of the car manufacturing numbers tick down. And, that's not necessarily too much of a surprise. I think this is a function of, we are coming off low bases. And I'd love it if this was a sign that, there's a turnaround incoming, and, I can say that with conviction. But the reality is, we've got to keep waiting and watching, and things are still challenging here. And I don't think that's a surprise to sort of anybody that's on the ground.
And
these numbers were more or less in line with that.
Yeah, any small improvement in any of the market indicators or the economic indicators is always welcomed. Now, there's a lot of discussions going on, Mohammed, about inflation targeting in South Africa, about potentially lowering that target from the current 3 to 6% to lower to a single point target, potentially around 3%. What kind of impact would this have, most importantly, on households who would be watching us today and our consumers, and also on businesses and the overall economy if this decision were to go through?
Yeah, I think broadly speaking, there's massive implication. I think if you just sort of keep it in the context of the household, you'll get a little bit more stability just in terms of, future planning, whether that is basic planning in terms of groceries and things like that. It will help in that respect. But I think in a more practical way, if you sort of look at your retirement annuity policies, your provident funds, etc., they're all sort of linked to CPI. And currently the target is between 3 to 6%, which is quite a substantial range, to have that sort of pegged at 3%, does really help from a planning perspective. It gives you a lot more sort of certainty about the future. And I think, if I have to take a step up and, maybe look at it from a monetary policy Reserve Bank perspective, it makes things a lot more predictable, a lot more transparent, and it helps to support inflation expectations in the long term. But that being said, there are some downsides. You kind of then have to stick to that target, and deviating from it means that sort of policy revolves almost directly around bringing the inflation down or up in relation to where it needs to be, which would probably be around 3%. And, the sort of having the policy revolve solely around that could also have an impact on economic growth, job creation, that sort of thing. So in many ways, it's good, but I think that a lot of that is dependent on our capacity to actually stick to that target. So it's a challenge, but ultimately a step in the right direction, I would say.
Yeah, I have a very last question for you, and I'd really appreciate it if you could keep it very brief as we are quite pressed for time. That Nvidia was quite exciting yesterday, seeing them pushing towards the 4 trillion market capitalization in intraday trading. What does this tell us about the boom of AI and the businesses like Nvidia and others that are coming on board?
No, perfect. So Thebe, you've hit the nail on the head there. You know, if you had to ask someone 10 years ago, what do they think the first company to hit $4 trillion market cap would be? Nvidia would not even be close to on the list, you know, let alone close to the top of it.
Yeah.
And that is just a function of the advent of AI with ChatGPT, you know, towards the end of 2022. And Nvidia is very much the market leader in that space. That's not expected to change anytime soon, you know. So I imagine we'll continue to see them running, and soon enough, 4 trillion will be in the rear view, and they'll probably not see that again.
Yeah.
But just on that, I do think that there are probably a couple of other companies that'll hit that sort of milestone not too long from now. Microsoft is probably the one that is next to do that, and that'll probably be in the next couple of months or so. But yes, the bottom line is that AI is not going anywhere.
Yeah, we'll definitely keep that in check. Thank you so much, Mohammed Wakely from Sasfin. It's been our market commentator for today. I'll have markets for you again tomorrow.